Doing
about our
great.
guest today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our guest. Is a great friend and colleague, Shawn Hutson, is working now as in financial services. Going to give us a great rundown. He used to work in education as well as a teacher, so we love to kind of hear the entrepreneur story about that shift, right? Of we come from really teaching a lot of folks into running that new business, right? So we're all about growth and learning your mission here at Growth Lab. So we're excited to have you. Thanks for joining, Shawn.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, since we're all about stories here at Growth Labs, right? Really, we want to understand, where did you get your original start? We know you got some teaching experience. Give us a little intro into how you started your journey and how it ended to where you are now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No problem, Chris. So yeah, I graduated from Eastern Illinois University back in like 2014. And when I graduated, I came back to Chicago and I was a paraprofessional at a charter school. And I mean, out the gate, I was making about $27,000 a year. And my dad said, "Be your own man," and got my own place and had a studio, and that was like $700 a month. So that was like half my paycheck. I had $700 left over to pay some bills. But I mean, I went in every single day, and I was excited to be with my students. I had a really good time with them, and then at the end of the year, they were like, "All right, you're getting a raise," and I was so super excited until I realized it was like 2%. And 2% of 27,000 is like $700. It wasn't nothing. And everything else around me just became more expensive. And basically I had to start cutting out a lot of things like, cable. I had to get rid of my car. And every year was if I felt like that 2% was putting me in a worse position financially. So what ended up happening was I went back to some mentors. They gave me a couple books to read. One was Rich Dad Poor Dad, another was um The Millionaire Next Door, and Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. So I read
Mm.
those three books, changed my entire perspective on money, continued to read some other books and watch some YouTube videos. And, I was like, all right, time to pay off some debt. So, I paid off $4,000 of credit card debt. And, luckily I was in education for at least 5 years by that time. So 20,000 was forgiven. I had paid $30,000 cash. Um, and the reason I was able to pay off all my debt in about 3 years is because I had, started doing some tutoring. So I was doing before school tutoring, after school tutoring, chess club, Wealthy Wednesdays, um, a spring break academy, summer school, everything.
Right.
And my income basically jumped to about 85,000, 80, 85, 83. And, I just used that money to get ahead, build my emergency fund. And that's when money became, personal finance became a little bit more important to me. And I, continued to teach the kids. And then after COVID, I was like, all right, time to go. And then jump into the finance space and was like, you know what? Let me just help, the people in the community, especially the people that look like me who may not know all this information. So that's basically beginning and end, like how I got here.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, and that's incredibly important, right? That financial literacy part of like reading these books and like these shifts of perspectives, right? You mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad as one of those main books. What are some of those other key mind shifts that you started to experience or that you maybe you work with, people commonly right now that um help you get to the next step, get rid of maybe those roadblocks or self-limiting beliefs that you might have about money.
Budgeting was like the main ingredient. That was something I wasn't doing in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I said I was budgeting, but I wasn't. Like what I would do
Yeah.
is I had like a sheet of paper and I would write down like 1 through like 31, which would represent the days of the month. And then I would write like rent on the first and electricity on the 13th and gas on the 15th. And I just put a check mark. Whenever I paid those bills. And that's what I thought budgeting was when I first started and I was on my own. And then, I wasn't keeping track of like discretionary spending or anything like that. So when I went out with the boys for a beer or, a trip, anything like that, I wasn't really keeping track of what I was spending. Another thing was like the credit card debt. When I first started, I was paying the minimums. Um, and then I remember seeing that first statement come, and it was like, yeah, if you continue to pay the minimums for the next 20, 30 years, you will have paid, 12,000 out of the 4,000 you borrowed. And I'm like, what? I ain't trying to pay like three times more. So I know that was like really big in the very beginning. And then like even keeping a decent amount of an emergency fund. When I first started, my emergency fund was always like 500 to 1,000, and then I come to find out they're like, yo, you should have 3 to 6 times your expenses. So ever since I had 3 to 6 times my expenses, it's funny how emergencies kind of disappear. They say emergencies become inconveniences. It's just like the car went out, oh man, but I got the money to be able to afford a tow truck or whatever it may be.
Right.
And then investing, that was something I wasn't taught at all when I was younger. But I got into understanding like what is a pension, because I was in education. I didn't even know really what it was, and what's a 403b and what's a 401k and what's a Roth IRA and things like that. So as I learn more about that, I started putting money into the different retirement accounts, because I was like, I don't want to work until the day I die. So
Right.
that's pretty much like the foundational stuff, at least when I was growing, like in my like mid 20s, that I started to
Yeah.
learn, that I implement now in where I am today.
Wow. A lot of the similar background in the fact I was a former teacher. After my pro wrestling days, I was a teacher for X amount of years. And then my school closed and I was working at an
Mhm.
extra mile foundation school. This was considered like it was a Catholic school in the inner cities. And it was such a great experience. Loved it after I was in an affluent school before. And then I was first in Pittsburgh public schools teaching. So I taught there, went to
Mhm.
suburban area, then went back to where I really enjoyed teaching, and then basically decided to become an entrepreneur full time and say, okay, I'm going to do my tutoring business half time and work for somebody. And then I learned the whole media side. But what I learned in this process as a teacher, it never dies. The thing
Mhm.
that we've learned as teachers makes it so much easier for us to explain things to other people, because as a teacher, we need to get people to listen to us. And a
Right.
lot of people just talk and think somebody's listening, not know they're active listening, not know they're really paying attention in that journey. How has teaching helped you in the financial world? Teaching financial literacy and teaching your clients how to grow wealth.
That's a really good question now.
Yeah.
I would say I lead with education, so I don't want to come off as a salesperson. At the end of the day, am I selling things? Yes, but I don't want to come off that way. So I always lead with education. So understanding what people like care about and talking about the things that they care about, is usually very helpful. Um, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, just I mean, I have so much knowledge about so many things, but they don't care about everything that doesn't deal with them and making it special to them. So, like, if I'm sitting in front of somebody, who is very interested in, their kid going off to college, okay, have you ever heard of, high yield savings account? Have you ever heard of, college savings plan, stuff like that? They're like, oh, what's that? And now we're talking about compound interest and things like that. So, it's very helpful to understand what people are interested in, just like in education, right? In the classroom, you got to understand what are your students interested in, because
Right.
if you're sitting here talking about stuff that they're not interested in, they don't care. So I would say that to answer your question now.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredibly important to really tie in some of the, because we use money as a tool, right, to help us drive and get to those different points of lives and things that we may want. And I know that part of your planning practice, you're ultimately helping connect those visions and dreams to what people want to ultimately achieve, right? So, putting your kids to college is one of them. Retiring at a solid age, right? So you're not working until you're 85 years old. These are sort of, things that uh, I personally believe that financial literacy can ultimately get us, and knowledge is kind of power, right? In the sense of, if I know how to operate the tools that are in front of me, and make it much more easier to make those decisions. So Tell me kind of right now, kind of what your main mission is in your planning practice now today. I know you've been working with a lot of Chicago-based company families, but curious to hear personally kind of how your mission's kind of evolved so far.
Yeah, so just like the beginning of this video, and I was talking about how like it was really important for me to pay off debt. I pretty much drive my practice around that. So I'm looking for people, who want to become free, debt free, you know,
That free practice, yeah.
and I feel like those are the type of people who will find, the most interest in like planning because, sometimes they just don't know where to go. Um, so that's typically, the focus for me.
Got it.
Uh, and
And
that's key. And that's key that to educate people about debt and understanding that you can have money in the bank. You don't have to always borrow from a
mhm.
financial institution. You teach those things. So you look at some of the practices you learned and put them into your own practice and being the educator once they become a client to see their growth. Because a lot of financial people don't educate their clients. They just take whatever money they've invested and then just leave it go instead of being really involved.
Exactly.
Right. So to that point, we're always about differentiation here on this platform. What are some of the ways that your planning service really differentiates itself from maybe other companies that, as Neil mentioned, don't really lead with education? Um,
you know, like a lot of times when I sit down and I'm giving people a call to just sit down and even have a conversation with me, they're like, I already got a financial guy, right? And most people kind of in this finance space focus more so on like investments only. But with Northwestern Mutual, we focus on both risk management and wealth management. So understanding those key financial components of like an emergency fund, health insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, and then also that the wealth management component is very helpful in building a nice financial plan because if anything were to happen, you just want to make sure that you're not going backwards. You want to make sure you continue to move forward or you just pause right where you are.
right. Yeah, there's something to the financial or overall financial strategy of having both offense and defense, right?
Hmm.
Like I could definitely concur with that. A lot of people just think, okay, yeah, all my money in Bitcoin and high risk investments and think that that's going to be your salvation. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case a lot of times, right? So,
Exactly.
no, that's really great. Um, as you're thinking about kind of what's next for your practice, what are some of the things you're excited about doing next year?
Doing a lot of speaking engagements and getting in front of people, rather than being in the office and just calling a bunch of my friends and family and the people that's friends of theirs. I'm starting to go out in the community, such as my church, like joining the financial uh the financial background of the church, so helping them with some
Mm-hmm.
things, going back into the school system actually, talking to the middle schoolers and some high schoolers and even the teachers. I've sat down and talked to a couple teachers actually, and I'm like, hey, listen, is this what you want to do literally to the day you die, or do you want to choose to be able to stop working? Because I've had conversations with my own teachers back when I was in fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, and they're still working until the day they die because they simply
Wow.
just didn't receive a call from somebody like me who's like, hey, listen, you don't have to do this forever and ever and ever if you don't want to. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's super important that you and Neil are like prime examples of individuals who still use very much learning at its core through every monicum of life, but
We moved on
made
from
that transition
education.
from that role, right?
Yeah, every time
Hmm.
it seems like it's trying to bring me back to tutoring business or different things, and then I get more education. This is the power of what I've seen. Once you choose a profession, you choose what you want to learn. Because we're lifelong learners, because we chose to be teachers, and at one point you are a lifelong learner when you become a teacher. If you didn't survive one day in the classroom, if you
Hmm.
of learning, or you really won't like it and quit quickly. I ended up teaching for about 7 or 8 years. And
Hmm.
what I do is I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to do this. I'm gonna learn how to teach this. Okay, it's something new. It's gonna improve me and make me better. And listening to other podcasts of other marketing agencies,
Hmm.
listening to other guests that I've had on my show for the last 15 plus years and learning their knowledge and ability and putting it all together into something I'm growing. Lifelong learning, the opportunity to learn is endless now with the evolution of AI, the
That's right.
evolution of research galore out there. Education, the more knowledge you have for your clients, the more your clients will see you as a huge value for them. And that's what I've discovered and saw in my agency. And the more you can pick up something new that you learn, then that means it's constantly be a lifelong learner. And Chris, I know you do that. And I know our guest does as well, is say, hey, I'm going to continue to see what's going on, what's the best thing. And I'm going to learn about my client as well, or my potential client. Because if I
Mhm.
can't put together a plan that works for them, they're not going to be successful for the goals that they want. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
Okay.
think you're
Hmm.
spot on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean it's 360 all the way around, right? Round all work it's tied together. So um just kind of Shawn, thinking about, uh what are some of kind of the best ways that um people can really get in touch with you and ultimately really connect with you, right? Because you seem to offer quite a bit of good um sense and advisory for folks that may be looking to have that career transition and are simply just not sure how to plot the next step, right? Um,
Yeah. The best way, probably email. Um, my name, Shawn.Hutson@nm.com. Or Facebook if you're on that. Just literally
on
type in my
Facebook as well.
name, send me a DM. Those are generally the best ways to, you know, get in touch with me. Just shoot me a quick message and I'll sit down and talk to you.
Perfect. Any I guess for our audience, any last little key pieces of insight as it relates to someone who wants to make that career change, or maybe just has that financial uncertainty, what would you say to them today?
If you're thinking about the career change, definitely have your affairs in order first. I would say that. It is definitely tough to, pay your bills in the very beginning because you're building your own book of business. And then, if you're trying to make a change financially in your own life, just being open to the conversation a little bit earlier. Oftentimes people think like you got to sit down and have $1 million just to get started. And the truth is you just got to have the mindset to get started. Like I said, reading the books, looking up some stuff on YouTube, having conversations, like that's it.
Yeah, just making the first step. That's all it takes. That's awesome. Well, anything else on your end, Neil? Questions wise?
Not at all. No, I just think it's just great information. That's the kind of person you find somebody educated like that to teach you financial literacy, such an important thing. Appreciate it. It's great.
Yeah, no, we're gonna look forward to it, especially, you're gonna have, I'm sure you're gonna have future talks with kids and visiting schools. So that'll be real fun. Let us know. We'll help you publicize a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Uh,
Fantastic. That was the special simul. Go to uxbright.com for Christopher Richards, and that was a special simulcast.